Good morning or afternoon for many people. Welcome to the JB show on Revolutionary Blackout Network. My name is James Fauntleroy. I am your host. It is so good to see every single one of you in the building this morning. Just to let you guys know that the JB show streams every single Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on RBN. You can also catch me on RBN Live on Tuesdays at 4 p.m. and the Savvy and JB show at 6 p.m. on Thursdays. I will also like to encourage you all to give a like to the stream, as well as if you are not subscribed, please make sure to subscribe and click the bell notification to alert whenever we go live, as well as get put on our emailing list because you know the YouTube algorithm does not like us. I want to say hello and warm welcome to all of you. I will get to my introductions as per usual a little bit later, but for now, I want to introduce my special guest today. It is the Green Party Senate North Carolina senatorial candidate Matthew Ho is joining us today. It is so good. Thank you so much, Matthew, for joining me on the JB Show. How are you doing today?
Good, James. Thanks for having me with you.
Yes, that's definitely. You're running in the Green Party, and we've had, as you may know, here on RBN, we've had the Green Party Summit a few months ago, and that Green Party Summit was a huge success when we were bringing to light. I'm not Green Party Summit, a third party summit, basically. It was a summit for people who are running third parties as well as independents that especially are ones who are anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, ones who are running within the United States. And so, uh, as per usual, like for instance, people like myself and Sabby Sabs, as you've been on her show
Mhm.
prior, we take what we like to call an 80-20 approach, 80% direct action, and then that little 20% on, electoral politics,
Okay.
and that 20% is typically geared towards either local, state, or if they are going to be federal races, then they are more in line with third parties or independent candidates. So it is a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I'm in agreement with what you all are doing in terms of your 80-20 approach. I mean,
Mhm.
I believe very much that a political party should be just the arm of a movement.
Mhm.
Political parties that exist for themselves, like we have now, you see what happens. They exist for themselves and they don't exist for a constituency. They don't
Yep.
represent people. They don't and they don't represent those values, those
Mhm.
needs, those interests of
Mhm.
that constituency. And that's what we're dealing with here. And I think that's something that we're trying to build. With my
Mhm.
background, I was in the Marine Corps at the State Department, and I turned against all that. It took me too long to do that, but eventually I did. Uh, and I have worked as an activist on two levels. One out of
Mhm.
Washington D.C. At a
Mhm.
think tank. So I've worked with members of Congress on anti-war, human rights, foreign policy issues. So kind of had that top level thing, but also
Sure.
with Veterans for Peace and Code Pink especially. I've done a lot of civil disobedience, direct action. I've been arrested, I've spent a night in jail, like that kind of stuff. And
Mhm.
so I've been on both those levels, and I see the need for both of them. But again, it goes back for me like this political effort really has to be, as you said, just one part. It's just one arm of the body,
Mhm.
and if we lose sight of that,
Mhm.
we do not achieve the results that are needed by so many people, let alone, a big issue for us, of course, is climate, right? Let
Yeah.
alone for the entire planet. So I really
Mhm.
appreciate you having me on here. And yeah, I really, really appreciate what you all are doing.
Yeah, thank you so very much. I do have some questions to go over with you as I continuously on my channel, as well as when I talk to people on here on RBN, especially if they're running for office. I do have some policy questions that I would like to get into
Mhm.
to see where you're at so that people can have a synopsis of where you stand. And these are also not only policy stances, but also they are strategy stances as well, because a lot of times we may talk to candidates about policy, but they never really talk about strategy. So I want to get
Sure.
into that too as well to see where you stand on certain things. Now, one of the first questions that I have, and this is a pretty much a standard question, what is the main driver why you decided to run for North Carolina in the Senate?
I was asked to run by the North Carolina Green Party, and
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's the people in my life who are suffering because of deliberate government policy. I mean, I have
Mm-hmm.
people in my life who have to check their checking account before they go to the doctor. People who are very close
Yeah.
to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have neighbors who have been forced to move because corporations have bought the homes they are renting and
Mm-hmm.
raised the rent by 50%.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I see this in my life. Uh, Additionally, I see the lack of accountability, whether it
Mm-hmm.
was for the wars overseas,
Yeah.
the wars here at home. I
Mm-hmm.
have the number of people I know. Look, if you're a combat veteran, you know a lot of suicides and you know a lot of overdoses. And with
Yeah.
the overdoses, I mean, there's at least 6 I've known of. And here in North Carolina, we have 12 overdose deaths a day. And
Mm-hmm.
so, the lack of accountability for any of those things, and we can get into whole other issues. I mean, that's just one aspect of the war on drugs, say, right? That
Mm-hmm.
doesn't even get into the policing, the mass incarceration, the deliberate ruining of communities, right? Particularly Black and brown communities
Mm-hmm.
by by design,
Yeah.
And so, where is the accountability for that? As well, then, where is the relief? Where is the change, if you will? And I know change, we're all sick of hearing about that term change, right?
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
I mean, that essentially that's the essence. And so for me, what can I do to put such pressure onto the system that the system hurts and it
Mm-hmm.
has to change? And that's where we come into other aspects of our of our policies, talk about strategy, but that really is part of it. Put such pressure onto the system that it is forced to change. I mean, I guess I can roll into it. I might as well. I view three things with what I'm doing here. One is to help continue to build a movement, particularly the political party aspect of that movement, right? So to build
Mm-hmm.
a true party for workers that is dedicated to rectifying the last 50 years of financialization and giving
Mm-hmm.
workers the same foundations that the corporations, the banks, and the wealthy have had, not just the last 50 years, but more or less the entire history of this country.
Mm-hmm.
The second aspect is to get something more than crumbs for our people, right? I mean, right now we are living off of crumbs. Right now, people get, oh, here's your Medicaid expansion, right? Which does help some people. But how do you, I mean, if what we're living in right now is the legacy of Obamacare.
Yeah.
1 in 3 COVID deaths are because we have a for-profit healthcare system. The for-profit healthcare system killed over 300,000 people during the COVID pandemic in the last 2 years. I mean, you see that even with, another here in North Carolina, 1,200 infants die a year. So every day, 3 or 4 moms and dads leave a hospital in North Carolina and their infant has just died. That happens 3 or 4 times a day in North Carolina. That's the legacy of Obamacare. So we are living off of crumbs. And so if we can put such pressure as we build to get something more, and we've seen that happen with third parties in the past. I think most people are familiar with how the Populist Party, the
Mm-hmm.
People's Party at the end of the 20th century really had an effect, say, or the progressive movement or the socialist movement in the early part of the 20th century, really had an effect on particularly, say, labor, getting rid of child labor, 8-hour work days, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third aspect of it is to put such pressure that real reform, real change, and in our electoral system occurs, so that we're beginning the process of bringing in rate choice voting. We're bringing in the process of bringing in proportional representation. We're doing something to address the electoral college, as well as a host of other issues pertaining to our political system that need to be, we need to take control of it, rebuild it, and reimagine it. So those are the three kind of the fork I see of what I'm trying to do here in terms of what we're trying to accomplish and why we're trying to accomplish it.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're a proponent. Would I be accurate in saying that you're a proponent of making the comfortable uncomfortable in order to enact change for those of us who have been largely placed in the uncomfortable position throughout our lives?
Yeah, I know. I have a bunch of tattoos, James, and I've never talked about them. But since you brought that up directly, I do have
Hmm.
on this arm here written to reminds me to remember Mary's song from the Gospel of Luke, which is to
Hmm.
rise up the afflicted and bring down the rich.
Hmm.
And that's what I wear. That's what I have on my arm. So absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. That kind of goes in line with my second question. This is more policy intensive as far as the plans that the 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 policies that you plan on trying to produce or introduce if you were to get into the Senate. What are the top three policies that would be your first priority to implement as senator?
Really, it comes down to that bread and butter stuff, which is more
Hmm.
actually life and death. So it
Sure.
is healthcare, housing, and living wages. Going to what FDR was trying to accomplish with the Economic Bill of Rights, and that all falls under the Green New Deal, as the Green Party has been speaking of it for the
Hmm.
better part of a decade and a half now. This
Hmm.
idea that any type of reconstruction of the American economy that is needed to deal with the climate collapse must
Hmm.
include a complete restructuring of our economic infrastructure in order to survive that collapse, but
Yeah.
additionally, to meet the life and death struggles of people right now. So, my attitude going into the US Senate is I take from what I learned in the Marine Corps. And Marine Corps, we had a slogan: no better friend, no worse enemy. And so, no
Hmm.
better friend to the people who put me there, and no
Hmm.
worse enemy to the people who are there already. And
Hmm.
they're not going to get, as a U.S. Senator, as you know, there are a variety of mechanisms where one lone senator can cause
Hmm.
tremendous discomfort, if you will,
Hmm.
to the rest of the Senate. And we've seen
Hmm.
that at times. And we rarely, rarely see that for the people. We see it for, I think everyone's familiar with Joe Manchin and his
Hmm.
desire to protect, the coal miners, or not the coal miner, the coal mining companies, because I don't
Hmm.
think he really cares at all about the actual coal miners themselves.
Of course.
So that idea of like, look, you are not going to get your $15 billion aircraft carriers unless our people get health care, and just be such a block to everything that is anathema to what we stand for, trying to forcibly cause such disruption in the present process of the United States Congress. It goes back to the whole thing, right, of socialism
Hmm.
for the rich, the corporations, the banks, and rugged individualism for the rest of us. I mean, everyone's familiar with that term at this point, but that's the
Yeah.
reality of what we're seeing.
Hmm.
How can I be a wedge to cause such discomfort that, at the very least, as I said before, those crumbs start to look like slices of bread, if not whole loaves? So it is, for me, that the main concern is to stop the harm, to do something about these life and death things. Of course, there are a number of other things I'm very concerned with: climate, of course, the
Hmm.
war on drugs, the wars overseas, education is another one. But a lot of these things tie together. I mean,
Hmm.
with a Green New Deal, you have a public banking program, and with a
Hmm.
public banking program, you're now able to talk about helping people with housing. You're now able to talk about helping people with education. You're now
Sure.
able to talk about debt cancellation. So
Yeah.
these things are all interrelated and interconnected, and
Yes.
that's the approach I'd be going into.
Yeah. This is just a follow up question off the top of my head. So, as far as people like Joe Manchin, Kristen Sinema, and there are other Democrats in office that are considered to be obstructionists, but really they're just a rotating villain that we see. But can you see a potential influence of being Joe Manchin like, but for the working people, as far as for healthcare for all, for housing for all, for moving to, say, for instance, a public banking system, or getting money out of politics? Are you willing to make the people who are in Congress and in the Senate so uncomfortable and even risk a term, being one term?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there's no point in moderating my positions to make my life more comfortable. Look, I mean, I don't. I mean, I don't need to be doing this, so to speak, right? I mean, like a lot of us, you don't need to be doing this, right? I mean, you don't need to be doing this type of work. You could be doing something else and,
Mm-hmm.
letting things go by and just trying to get along. But you
Mm-hmm.
choose to do this hard work,
Yeah.
and that's how so many of us in the movement are. And absolutely, the idea of I'm not going up there to make any friends. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Franklin Roosevelt, who they hate, for the people on Wall Street especially hated him, and
Mm-hmm.
Roosevelt would say, "I welcome their hatred." And
Mm-hmm.
that is exactly how I feel about it too. I've worked with these people. I've seen these people. I could, if people want, they can reach out to me. I've spoken about how I have been in with members of Congress who have uh, who clearly said one thing about the wars to me, about how the wars can't be won, how they are wrong, how they know the generals are lying to them about the wars, and then publicly they do the opposite. I mean, I've seen the malfeasance. I've experienced it. I know who these people are.
Mm-hmm.
I have no intention of becoming their friends. If it's a one term position for me, and so be it. But if I can't accomplish in 6 years particularly the real crucial need of building,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, so if I am able to be in the Senate and I am
Mm-hmm.
able to block things that both parties want, and we know that there's mass overlap between the two parties. I mean, you're not saying
Mm-hmm.
the two parties are the same, but there's when you talk about the wars, when you talk about the wars overseas, the war on drugs, the border
Mm-hmm.
policy, when you talk about big agriculture, when you talk about the banks, when you talk
Yeah.
about right, I mean, big pharma, all those things, the overlap is there. And so
Mm-hmm.
if I can be a block to any one of those things, and by doing so, get the soapbox to stand on to continue to help us build because of those efforts in the Senate. And
Mm-hmm.
what can I accomplish then in 6 years doing that? I think quite a lot. The idea is that even if they beat me after 6 years and chase me out, that we have at that point one or two or three others in the Senate and a whole host more in the House. I mean, so the idea is building. I say it to my folks all the time down here. Look, November 8th is the election. We're going to do everything we can to win, but that is not the end date. That is just one goal we have. We must continue to build. We must structure. We must build on what others have done before us
Yeah.
and help others around the country do what we're doing here, just as others around the country are helping us do what we're doing. I mean, we wouldn't be anywhere near where we're at right now
Mm-hmm.
in terms of what we're able to do if it was
Mm-hmm.
not for the support of thousands of people around the country. So if I win, what can I then do to turn that so that that support goes back to those folks?
Yeah. And I know you're not saying that the two parties are exactly the same, but I am saying that the two parties are exactly the same. That's what I'm saying. And the
Yeah,
thing is that even if you don't think so, the Venn diagram of the Democrat and Republican parties are so overlapped to the point where you barely see any fringes of difference between them besides social issues, and that's pretty much it. But that's just
right.
my personal opinion. I'm
No,
not
no,
basing that on you,
I
but
agree. When I say that they're not the
yeah,
same, I mean, there's some great Venn diagrams out there that show exactly that, and you have some social issues, and
yeah.
even then there's overlap. Look, we have here in North Carolina, 14 Democrats running for the U.S. Congress,
Hmm.
only actually 15, including Sherry Beasley is running for U.S. Senate. So only 1 out of 15 of those Democrats support Medicare for all, single payer. But
Yeah.
there's a Democrat who's running for Congress in the first district who votes against Planned Parenthood when he's in the state Senate. And there's a Democrat in the ninth district, Ben Clark, who just voted for the Don't Say Gay bill here, as a
Wow.
state senator. Yeah, I
Wow.
mean, so you can say that the social issues are evenly split, but they're not. I mean, we saw that, I think, just this week where Joe Biden nominated a pro-life judge to be on the court. And
Yeah.
of course, I think as people watching this are familiar with the mass amount of support. I mean, the obsequious
Hmm.
support that
Yeah.
Nancy Pelosi and others gave Henry Queller in
Hmm.
Texas to help
Yeah.
him win over a progressive. Henry
Hmm.
Queller being a pro-life Democrat, an anti-choice Democrat. So there are, the thing about it for us is can we get to the point where as we build the political arm of what you all have, what so many people have been doing in terms of building a leftist workers movement. Can
Mm-hmm.
we get to the point where we have the foundation there, the resources there, that we attract people out of the Democratic Party in terms of candidates, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of what I see from, and I get support from people who are running as Democrats, and they say, you know what, the infrastructure is just not there for me. The resources aren't just there. I could do what you're doing and raise $20,000-$30,000 a month and bust my ass to do it, or I could be a Democrat and raise $300,000 to $400,000 a month, but just by flipping a switch, by bringing in all the resources they have. So that's another aspect of this, is we just don't have to build with the political aspects that we're building. We have to build campaign managers. We have to build treasurers, right? We have to build media people. We have to build people who know all the technical aspects of campaigning in order to be effective, in order to bring more people into the party, particularly, not just voters, but people who are actively going to support it, whether because they're running or because they're filling a role or because they're volunteering or what have you. So I see that as very crucial, as well as to continue to build the scaffolding that's already been set. I don't want to be stepping on anyone's toes here. I mean, because people have been doing this for decades. Just saying at this point where we need to go next in order to possibly could you get somebody in the future, say a Cory Bush or someone like that, not run as a Democrat, but rather run as a third-party leftist Workers' Party candidate, because she sees a good avenue that way. Whereas right now, there may not even be an avenue for her to run as a third party or an independent. In Missouri, where she's coming out of, right? And that's an issue. We have these issues with ballot access, and we have to make sure that people who want to do this, who want to join us, see this as and I hate this word, viable, because I hear it all the time, but a viable way forward. And I think we can do that. And I think what you guys are doing particularly helps us out quite a bit. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here. I really should shut up and just start listening at this point.
Well, one of the things that I want to harp on is the fact that you were talking about building, uh, uh, you know, third parties more. And I think part of it has to do with people realizing that third parties are sorely needed, and also they have uh, they 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 have been depressed by the duopoly constantly over and over. With that being said, and I've said it on my channel and I will say it again, to anybody that considers themselves to be independent media, including the larger channels that have 300, 400,000, 500, 800, a million subscribers, are you bringing on people who are part of third parties or independent candidates and making them popular so that they could be more viable, so that they can actually push the policies that you say you champion? Are you are you party loyal or are you policy loyal? And that's the question that needs to be asked, especially to a lot of people who are in this independent media space. And are you making it so that it's just access journalism for certain people who are in part of the duopoly, or are you for the actual policies no matter what party they're in? That's the question. And that's me giving a dig at some of the people who are in this space who are not giving you any type of notoriety for this race. That's that's just me doing that, because I'm tired of people saying that you guys aren't viable because you're in a third party when they literally have the platform to do it. So
Right. No, and I
pardon
see
me
that.
for that, but
No,
I had to put that out there.
I make the same statement, and that's my assessment as well. You see, what's really been put
Yeah.
in very stark relief for me has been that difference, as you just noted, James, of do you support the policies or do you
Mm-hmm.
support the party? The partisan nature of so much of this is really troubling in a manner that, you understand it and then you start doing it. And then you really see kind of like the behind the scenes and that access, particularly let's go with the journalism, the access
Mm-hmm.
journalism, where it is very clear And I've seen this. And I had this actually happen when I spoke out against the Afghan war in 2009. U.S. Central Command, so David Petraeus's command at the time down in Florida, they were responsible for the war in Afghanistan as well as the war in Iraq. They hired a strategic communications firm to discredit me, and they did a lot of different things. Like to put up a fake Wikipedia page about me and other stuff. But one of the things they did was that somehow they knew wherever I was going to be on, they would know. And they would send a note to that producer, to that reporter, whoever, saying, if Matthew Ho is the kind of guy you want to have on, then we don't think any of our generals, like General Petraeus or General McChrystal, is right for your network. And I saw the emails. I saw those. That's what they would say. And that was, this is something that is well established what they do. And so I know right now the same is happening where the North Carolina Democratic Party, the Beasley campaign, the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, the Mark Elias law firm are doing exactly that. They are contacting journalists, media networks, whoever, and saying, you know what, if you're the kind of place that wants to put a guy like Matt Ho on, then you're not the kind of place that we want to have our people on, and you see that happen with forums, with candidate forums. Well, if you're going to have these people on who aren't even polling anything, then really you're not very serious. So we're not going to take part in your forum. And that gets into how everybody hedges, right? So the people who are doing those forums, they say, well, you can't be on because you're not polling, but you're not polling because literally the people who do the polls don't put you on the polling, right? Don't have you included in the poll. And then they say you're not doing that because you're not raising enough money to be viable. And the reason why you're not raising enough money to be viable is because people don't know who you are, because the media is not covering you and giving you that space. And it becomes this circular logic where everyone hedges because someone else is not doing something that gives them all the excuse they need, all the reason they need. And it's complete cowardice to not promote candidacies that are independent or third party.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to get back to the questions that I have. I didn't want to deviate too far before we get into the main topic of the story. But as far as the next question, it has to deal with jobs. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, North Carolina currently has an unemployment rate of 4.1%. How would you respond to people who say, well, the rate of employment is already good, it can't get much better than this?
I had my first tweet ever go viral about this, and it's a old joke. It goes back to at least Bill Clinton. Probably goes back to Ronald Reagan. It applies to both parties. And the joke is simply this: Joe Biden walks into a restaurant. He says to the server, I've created 8 million jobs. And the server says, yeah, I know. I've got 3 of them. And it's that type of my campaign manager reminded me the other day of an Onion article from 20 years ago, right? The headline in the Onion was like, George W. Bush promises to create millions of shitty jobs. Right? It's that kind of thing. And this is something that, I'm old enough to remember, I was born in 73 and I've always been a nerd, right, about this stuff. And so I remember watching, the conventions when I was 11 years old and things like that. And so, I remember the trickle down economics, the voodoo economics, and the rightful condemnation of that. But one of those things was that the jobs that were being created were burger flipping jobs. And that's not a dig on people who work in restaurants, who work in the service industry, who cook. It's a dig on the fact that those are generally low paying jobs that do not provide any type of benefit. And they in themselves, those jobs do not provide enough for someone to support themselves, let alone their families. One of the things that I advocate for is an annualized living wage tied into local housing costs. So we know what housing costs are. I'm going to butcher their name, but you can go and look at what the National Low Income Housing Consortium puts out every year in terms of what does it cost to rent a 2-bedroom apartment if you use the metric that 30% of your income should go to housing, which in Europe, I believe they use 25, but we use 30% here. You find that here in North Carolina, at this point, you need to be making $22 an hour throughout the state. And in some parts of our state, like Raleigh and Charlotte, it's going to be more. You know, you need to be making $22 an hour to afford a 2-bedroom home. Last time I checked the state's labor statistics, the average worker was making $16, or the median was $16 an hour for workers. So half of those folks making less than $16 an hour. And yet we know that to afford a 2-bedroom apartment, you need to be making $22 an hour. I mean, so one of the things is to tie our living wage annualized into what housing costs are. So as we see here in this part of North Carolina and lots of other parts of North Carolina throughout the state, basically a 20% rise in rents over the last year, your wage will go up 20%. And then that serves as a form of rent control as well. I'm a bit agnostic on universal basic income at this point. I mean, I agree generally with it. My preference is to pay people what their labor is worth, to pay people what they deserve, to pay people justly and fairly. And you know, I'm a libertarian socialist, so I believe everything we should be doing moving people towards employee ownership, right? So very supportive of unionization efforts, but I see unionization efforts, they in themselves, particularly with the pretty poor history of our unions over the last 50 years. And a lot of people would say complicit with the corporations in many ways, union leadership. I would say that where we have to go is towards employee ownership. And this gets back to the idea then of public banking, right? I mean, it's like gets back to the idea of that employees should have right of first refusal. If somebody is going, just like a homeowner, just like a renter should have right of first refusal. So if your business is being sold, the employees should have the right through public banking to purchase that business before anyone else does. That's a way that we move this forward, right? And the same applies to housing. If you live in a house, you've been a good tenant, you're making all your payments, you know, et cetera, and that house is being sold, you should have right of first refusal. And the way we finance that is through public banking. You know, I mean, so all these things are tied together, you know, but this attitude of our jobs, I mean, the greatest economic recovery in the history of America, or whatever the Biden administration is saying right now, it's all the same as look, worker pay has, guys, we all know workers haven't seen a rise in their pay, a real rise, a net rise in their pay in 50 years. And that's, again, the result of deliberate economic policies by both Republican and Democratic governments. You know, we can go back, we can start talking about it with, like, I like to start talking about it with Nixon taking us off the gold standard, you know, but how all this is all part of formulated policies to make sure that all the money is squeezed to the top. And that's the essence of the neoliberal economics of both Democrats and Republicans. And so when people say, why don't you run as a Democrat? I say, I'm a socialist. What business do I have being in a capitalist party? Why should I be part of something that I reject on a host of levels, including moral? You know, so I mean, but with the jobs we have to have a jobs guarantee, you know, and we have to push again for employee ownership. We have to all these things that we have structured in terms of tax codes, regulations, subsidies for corporations, all of those things must be undone and redone to benefit workers, because we've done it specifically to benefit the corporations and the banks for the last 50 years. Why can't we do it for workers? I mean, you look at, say, almost all of corporate profits every year, or I should say almost every year, corporate profits go almost entirely to dividends and stock buybacks.
Of course.
Not back into the workers, you know, and that's wrong. And that's something that we can change through our government.
But, you know, and this is in line with one of my questions that I was talking about. In your website, you know, and under an economy for workers and for a livable wage, you explain how CEO pay has increased over 1,300% over the last 40 years. So because you are a proponent of worker-owned businesses, as I am too, because that's what I truly do believe in, What methods of arm twisting and shaming are you prepared to do, in the Senate in order to throw people under the bus? Would that even mean going as far as using your bully pulpit to throw people like Joe Biden under the bus to let him know that he does not stand with working people?
Oh, of course. Absolutely.
Mm.
Whether it is and I think so many of us are disappointed with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez because she went into Congress and she was
True.
doing exactly that. First day, she runs into Nancy Pelosi's office with the Sunrise Movement,
Mhm.
and takes part in that sit-in there. Within the first week, she was, explaining this is what lobbyists actually do. This is what it looks like. This is how corrupt it is. She's
Mhm.
kind of, and that's exactly what I would do. I mean, I would do exactly that. I would read all kinds of things into the congressional record,
Mhm.
for example,
Mhm.
including the torture report, the Senate Intelligence
Mm.
Committee torture report. That would be maybe one of the
Interesting.
first things I would do is read that
Yeah.
into, because they probably take away my security clearance after that, so I probably have to get that done right away, right? But no, exactly, to go in, and again, I'm not there to make friends. I don't like these people. I hate these people. These people killed my friends. They're killing my friends. They're causing
Mhm.
my friends and my family and my loved ones to suffer. They're causing your friends. I owe nothing to them, and they'll
Mhm.
receive nothing from me. I mean,
Mhm.
that's the pledge I can give you.
Mhm.
And so, what can we do to ensure that the underhanded dealings,
Mhm.
exposing the insider trading that goes on, all of that kind of stuff is brought to light. At the same
Mhm.
time, blocking all the subsidies, all the favorable regulations, doing everything we can to
Mhm.
ensure that business as usual does not occur. And by no means do I think they can get up there and that I'm going to change all this stuff and it's uh, you know going to be like Moses bringing a new set of laws or something like that. I mean, by no means. I mean, I know what you're up against here, but the idea is to continue to build. It's to continue
Mhm.
to inspire. I
Yeah.
just heard Richard Wolff the other day remind me of this quote that,
Mhm.
and I think it was Vladimir Lenin who'd said it, but at least that's the thing where I had it attributed to that. For decades nothing happens, and then in weeks decades happen, and we have to build, and we have to know things take time. But then we hit a
Mhm.
tipping point, and
Mhm.
the result is enormous. And I think, and I agree with Wolf when he was saying this. I think we are approaching that point, and I mean, continue to put that pressure on. I mean, we've seen it on, I think, a host of issues where there
True.
was a bulwark, there was an edifice that we were up against. Um, you know, uh, in terms of where I'm old enough again to remember very clearly when Ellen came out on television in 1996 or 1997, how big of a deal that was, like how truly big of a deal that was.
Yeah.
And then when I was in the Marine Corps years later, and as Don't Ask, Don't Tell and everything else, you talk to the younger Marines about it, and they just be like, we don't care. What's the big deal? We know so and so is gay. We really don't care. And like, so this idea that much of who we have in leadership are dinosaurs, and we just
Mhm.
have to begin to get, again, drive that wedge in there, start to open up cracks,
Mhm.
right? And then it's that whole analogy where there is one crack, one hole in the levee, and the levee will eventually break because of the pressure. And that's what we have to do. We just have to keep committed to that, not think anything's going to happen overnight, right? But expect to, as that, I think it was Lenin quote says, decades can happen to weeks if we are persistent, if we are patient, and if we are dedicated.
Mhm. So the next question that I have is about regarding education. This one, I know we have Savvy Sabs in the chat, and she was in higher education for years. And we also have Colin, who is part of the Indie News Network, who is also a teacher and an educator as well. And so they are big proponents of education. Uh, so, according to US News, North Carolina currently ranks number 15 out of 50 for pre K through 12 education and number 7 for higher education. What are some of the prescriptions that you would administer to raise the level of education?
Well, certainly education is a human right. And that
Mhm.
just goes to the idea that it should be, uh,
Mhm.
quote, free, unquote. I mean, of course, it's
Mhm.
not free. We mean we pay for it through the government,
Mhm.
but and the idea being that everyone needs it, and that there should be no
Mhm.
dictate on how or why education is achieved. If you want to go
Mhm.
through high school and that's it, hey, that's great. If you want to go and get your bachelor's and study whatever it is, that's terrific. If you want to go on to become a rocket scientist, knock
Mhm.
yourself out. But all
Mhm.
avenues should be open, and that includes for vocations and trades. If you want to, become, you want to open a a guitar teaching studio. I mean, all those things should be available to you. And then again, this ties into the idea of promoting people, giving them the finances, the ability, whether it's because of they have health care, whether it's because they have a living wage, whether it's because there is public banking, these things that allow people to do what they want to do, be the people they know themselves to be. Right. So part
Mhm.
of the thing for education is how do we allow people who, I mean, I think one of the worst things, James, that we do is like when we see a kid around, and I do this, like some 7-year-old kid, you're like, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like there's something we want to be when we grow up, right? Like some of us, I think, are gifted with that, where like
Yeah.
I want to become a doctor, or I've always wanted,
Yeah.
but a lot of us aren't. And
Yeah.
many of us go through how many different careers in our lives,
Yeah.
right? I mean, and many of us just don't have that because we have such a, and this gets back to our capitalist society where everything is about
Mhm.
making money and having a career that has a point to it as opposed to
Yeah.
living your life, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, so how do we make sure we've had this foundation? Hanging over all that is the coming climate collapse, where we are going to
Yeah.
see our economy just completely
Yeah.
devastated and destroyed to an existential level by what
Yep.
is coming in the next 20 or 30 years. It's bad now. It's life and death now, but it's going to get worse. So,
Yeah.
with the education is the ferment of that is how people improve themselves. And we did this throughout our history
Mhm.
as a people. We
Mhm.
said, at some point, we said, people have to have like that grade school education. They've got to know
Mhm.
how to read and write, and they've got to be able to do basic math. Right. And
Mhm.
then it become more advanced to that. And then it become people need to have, a high school education. In the late 19th century, you start seeing that, right? This push. And then, through as the 20th century begins and develops, and then most especially through, say, the GI Bill for white veterans, not for black veterans, but for white veterans. The
Mhm.
GI Bill is deemed as this is revolutionary. This is really going to expand our economy. It's going to do great things for our people.
Mhm.
And so, because college is necessary now. And
Mhm.
people understood that in 1945, 46, 47. And again, it applied only to white
Mhm.
veterans, not to black veterans. But I mean, so this
Mhm.
idea that we advanced and we advanced and we advanced, and then we said, nope, that's good enough. Meanwhile, as the rest of the world continues to advance, technology advances, the world becomes more integrated, more technical, more complicated. But we're still saying as a society, you know what? The high school level, that's good enough for
Mhm.
everybody. And then if you can get past there on your own, and take on all this debt and everything else, then that'll be good too. But yeah, I mean, so we have to address education as a need, but also too, we have to
Mhm.
also recognize how it's meant to preclude people, how we have a classist system, right? We have a
Mhm.
system that keeps,
Mhm.
the goal is to keep people in their place. And one of the ways to do that is to make sure that people don't have the ability to advance. And if they do advance, they're
Mhm.
suckered down, they're weighed down with so much debt that how do they move forward? And then this then turns into other aspects too, say with healthcare, or like, how do you move forward if you are tied to a job because
Mhm.
of healthcare? And we all know people like that. We all know people who are in marriages still, because
Mhm.
if they get divorced, one of them is going to lose their healthcare. I mean, like you
Mhm.
see, like how all this is so insidious and how it holds back our entire society.
Mhm.
And so no education from pre-K through higher
Mhm.
levels to include vocational and trade should be
Mhm.
available to all at no cost. at no cost at point of service or however you want to define it, and that we
Yeah.
pay for it together as a people. And I guess we can get into MMT and all that kind of stuff, but certainly what we spend on, even if you take the idea that there's a pot of money in Washington, D.C., it comes in and it goes out. If you take that, the idea that somehow this is not a needed investment, that this wouldn't be, an investment in our society that would be explosive in terms of what it would do to allow people, particularly when you tie it in with, again, healthcare, housing, living wages, what it would allow people to do in their own lives. It would be it would be, I think, something that has never been seen before in terms of its effect on our society. And it's needed, again, because of the climate collapse, let alone the deadly, status quo we have now.
Should a education or lack thereof preclude you from a living wage?
No, absolutely not. I mean, a
Okay.
living wage should be it should be available to all people. I mean, it's a human
Okay.
right, be able to pay, particularly when we live in, I guess the United States is not the wealthiest country anymore. I guess China is by some metric. But, when you look and see at the amount of money corporations make, the profits, how big the banks are, and how clearly our system has been set up to ensure the success of corporations and banks, again, through deliberate government policy. Why can we not do the same for the American worker? Especially, it's a form of justice at this point, because that success of the corporations, the banks, the wealthy, has come out of the hide of the American worker.
Gotcha.
It has been for 50 years policy of the U.S. government to ensure that corporate profits go back into the corporations themselves, go back into the banks, go into stocks, go to shareholders. Because we saw in the 50s and 60s, worker pay rose it would exceed the rate of productivity every year. And since the 1970s, we've seen worker pay fall far below the rate of productivity, just as corporate profits have increased and increased. And now we see, even in a time of the worst inflation of 40 years, we see record corporate profits. And you don't need to have gone to business school or have studied economics to say, how does this make sense? You've got the highest inflation rate in 40 years, but you've got the highest corporate profits of all time. Obviously, the system is rigged to allow for that. And that's what we're saying, re-rig the system for the worker.
The next question has to do with healthcare. So, a massive issue is, especially because we are still in a pandemic. Some people may say that it's over, but of course, a lot of people who say that typically are the capitalists because they want you to go back to work. But that goes without saying. But according to the North Carolina Institute of Medicine in 2021, the state has an uninsured rate of 14.3%. What tactics are you prepared to use to push for single payer healthcare or greater in North Carolina? Now, I will say this. I think that single payer healthcare is in the right direction, but it's weak in my taste. I actually want a full nationalization because I
Right.
think that is actually the best angle, for the populace. But that being said, what tactics are you willing to push in order to get us healthcare? Uh, i.e., are you in favor of forcing a vote within the Senate?
Oh, absolutely. I've shut the whole government down. Like I said, they're not getting their
Okay.
$15 billion aircraft carriers
Mhm.
until we get healthcare. Absolutely. I mean, I'll say this too, with like a national healthcare system or national health service, I'm in favor of that as well.
Mhm.
And I see single payer, universal healthcare, Medicare for all, whatever we call it, as a station on that journey.
Okay.
Something that because that's the immediate need right now is
Mhm.
to undo the harm that our for-profit healthcare system is doing. And the
Mhm.
quickest and easiest way to ensure that people have healthcare is to give it to them. And then as we move
Mhm.
forward to structure a national health care system.
Mhm.
So I'm in complete agreement with that, James. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, uh, in North Carolina, I know that, the uninsured rate is 14%. The underinsured and uninsured rate is about 45%. And that applies. And so when you start looking at, okay, who does that apply to, and you take out, North Carolina is the third biggest state for veterans in the country, after California and Texas. So you take out hundreds of thousands of veterans out of that equation. You take out folks who are retired, excuse me, who are in the Medicare system, and Medicare, don't get me wrong, has lots of problems with it. But when you try and figure out how do they arrive at that 45% of people who are uninsured or underinsured, you start to realize when you're talking about working class adults, or I'm sorry, just adults, that 45% number is much, much higher who are underinsured and uninsured. Look, I mean, if you're making $20 an hour, and you pay a premium of $250 a month for your health care, and you have an $8,000 deductible, which is about what it kind of comes out to, you're talking then about $11,000 out of pocket every year for your health care. And that's if you're making $20 an hour. Then you're making a max of 36 grand a year. That's if you're getting 40 hours a week, which you're probably not. So you're saying that right off the bat, someone who's making $20 an hour, which our society kind of says is, oh, that's a great wage, which is complete BS. It doesn't pay for what people need to live on. So the where we are in terms of our healthcare here is very dire. People, again, are choosing not to go to the doctor because, they're checking their account. Oh, I've got so much, I can't go, making dangerous decisions. And we see that the Urban Institute just came out with a study a couple of weeks ago. 1 in 4 North Carolina adults are in collections for medical debt. Collections, not in medical debt. Collections for medical debt. Yeah. Right. I mean, how is that just on a level where if you're taking a kind of a big picture, top down look at our society, how can you hear that and say, good God, how is this sustainable? How as if you just have any concern for the ability of our communities to not collapse, how can you say that, 1 in 4 North Carolinian adults are in collection for medical debt and not realize like what a danger that is overall, let alone what a truly tremendous assault on individuals and families through this profit, again, of making sure all the money that's out there is squeezed to the top. That's the whole purpose of the neoliberal plan that we've seen our whole lives. Make sure all the money that's out there can go to the top. And you certainly see that with healthcare. Yeah. And so certainly everything we can to move forward to that single payer system with, as you said, James, the idea being that we have a national health service behind that.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And I fully agree. Thank you so much. This is going to be my last question before we get to the story regarding what's going on in your state between the Democratic Party. But this is pretty much one of the most important questions that I have for you. Being on Revolutionary Blackout Network, we are a group of Black anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist leftists here within this group. In the 2020 census, the population of Black people in North Carolina is 2.218 million people, or 21, over 21% of the population. Regarding systemic racism and white supremacy we face, along with our brown brethren, how can we produce a more equal and equitable North Carolina and the United States at large for people who look like me?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I believe in, James, is universality. Right, making sure programs are open to everybody, right, and this idea that there's no means testing for anything, because means testing is a way to exclude people. It's not a way to make sure that rich people aren't getting the benefits that only lower income and middle income people should get. It's a way to exclude people. The idea that if everybody truly has those foundations of living wage, jobs guarantee, healthcare, housing, education, it's not going to solve problems overnight. And I mean, that ties into the larger issue of reparations and what reparations look like. And I know with white folks, like, we just think reparations mean a check We're just going to hand out checks for $100,000 to that guy just because he's black, you know? And I think there probably should be some type of financial settlement involved, some type of restitution involved. However, it's much larger than that. It's, you know, I mean, I saw a thing the other day that in 1945, 2.5% of doctors in the United States were black or black men, and that now 2.5% of doctors in the United States were black men. You know, I mean, this idea that, as we see, I think most especially through the racial wealth gap, you know, or other metrics like home ownership, you know, that whatever we do, the system is going to evolve to keep the status quo, to keep the money at the top. And, you know, I think my, you know, understanding is that, you know, as you have this class system, you're going to have people on the bottom, right? You have to have this caste, you have to have this hierarchy. And this is nothing new to human society. I mean, this goes back thousands and thousands of years. And, you know, you guys could, I mean, not into a whole discussion of how we get to like this racialized system, but here we are. And how do we undo that? Right? How do we undo that? And the amount of, I think, education that needs to go into this. And another part of it too is, I'll say, like the use of identity politics in whatever noble purposes identity politics had has been turned on it. Right? Has been turned around on it. It's been weaponized, particularly by the right. And it's also been weaponized for its own self-interest by the Democratic Party. You know, I mean, especially with, I think, where Joe Biden, when he's running for president, says, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. You know, I mean, like that type of, you know, where, and I worked a number of years ago. So a number of years ago, I was on a political action committee, a 501c4 organization called Council for a Livable World. And this is where I really start to my disenchantment with the Democratic Party. I've never been a Democrat, but really what I was seeing in Congress, and then also being on this PAC and through other things, really seeing that there's no avenue here. There's no, this is not a path to anything other than maintaining the status quo. But so about 12 years ago, working with guys and gals who were on the Turn Texas Blue, and this idea that all we got to do is register a whole bunch of Latinos and just get them right, and then Texas will be ours by 2022. 2022 was when they were talking about Texas will be blue. It's a no-brainer. And if you said, well, why? Well, because they're brown. They have to vote for us. That was literally the reasoning behind, and they spent millions and millions of dollars on an effort, as we saw, right? I mean, like half the folks they registered ended up voting for Trump. You know, I mean, like, so, and without examining then, why did they vote for Donald Trump? You know, if you bring up, it's kind of like, you know, to get into foreign policy, it's kind of like talking about Ukraine as if it began before February of 2022. Right? You know, you're committing blasphemy. It's heresy. If you talk about the 12 million Obama 2012 voters who in 2016 either voted for Trump or sat that race out, you know, if you talk about that to Democrats, I mean, their ears immediately start bleeding. The frenzy that comes out of them for bringing up something that this could somehow have something to do with anything other than just basic identity, that it's got something to do with the suffering that people are going through. You know, it's interesting to me, that number, that 12 million number of Obama 2012 voters to Trump 2016 voters or sit-outs, that pretty much lines up with the number of American families that lost their homes during the Obama administration, when the Obama administration chose to bail out the banks and did nothing for the American homeowner, particularly those in the lower and middle classes, the working classes. I mean, as we know now, almost 2/3 of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. I mean, so our definition of working class, as if it somehow is confined or separate from middle class, I don't really understand how that works anymore. You know, because people are living paycheck to paycheck, whether they are blue collar or white collar, whether they're a college degree or not. I mean, it is because, again, the idea is to squeeze all the money to the top. And at first, they started with the lowest incomes, and they continue to climb and take and take. And so, get back to your point about racial justice. is
Mm-hmm.
to understand, is to break that divide between people, to see that we are all being victimized by the same financialization policies. I keep coming back to that, but that's where I see
Mm-hmm.
this as, and then everything extends from there, and you have the wars overseas and the wars here at home. But that's all, again, meant to make sure the money goes to the top. And so as we, get people to understand that the true enemy is not somebody who has a separate identity from you, which is the way they're taught now, but the true enemy are those who, look, 5% or 95% of all S&P 500 companies have the same 5 banks as their principal shareholders. So the same 5 banks, money management institutions like BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, they own 95% of the S&P 500. And yet here we are involved in this identity type politics. Really, it's a red versus blue kind of thing, because I'm not discounting identity at all. But the way it is currently practiced by the 2 major parties, to the point that, it's something like almost half of each of the Republicans and half of the Democrats view the other party as evil. That's where that type of identity politics goes to. It devolves to that point where you just see the other side as the other, right? Right. I mean, the historical other with a capital O, So yeah, I mean, the issue of racial justice is something that I think always has to be kept in the foremost of our thoughts, what we're trying to accomplish. Because if I'm here saying that, like, we need to do this for our people, for our work, for people who are working, for people who are living in my neighborhood, that includes all people. And I understand that, my white neighbor over here has a different experience and can expect different results in his life than my black neighbors there. And I know certainly that my neighbor's boys over there, they have a 1 in 3 chance of going to prison. And my nephews have a 1 in 19 chance of going to prison. I mean, so, understanding all that and having that first and foremost in our minds. And then this gets into much larger issues of like, well, what about this incarceration system we have, the war on drugs, policing, and then as being ready to take on whatever comes next. Because say we wave a magic wand, James, and we say we get this war on drugs. We get the war on drugs thrown out tomorrow. It's gone.
Okay.
What comes next? Something's going to come next. I mean, like, how long did it take them to come up with the war on drugs, the Nixon administration, to do that after the Civil Rights Act? How many years was that? 4, 5 years? So if we were able to do something that didn't, not even talk about restorative justice, but just to stop the harm, they're going to do something right away to recreate that harm, to find another way to suppress and oppress people, and in particular, Black and brown people, because that's how the caste hierarchy system works best for our, for financialization policies. So yeah, it's, it is, it's an issue that will be, first and foremost. And, I think there's a number of ways to go about it.
Okay. Thank you for that. Now, as somebody who is housing insecure, somebody who's disabled, and somebody, I wear a lot of different hats identity wise. I think it is imperative that anyone who is running, especially that are considers themselves to be anti-capitalist and anti-imperialist, to note that those of us who are black, especially within this country, that the system itself is something that needs to be changed, but at the same time, reparations is part of that changing of the system. And so I think that it's very important that we also uh, base it on whatever Black people feel is necessary for us in order to have equity and equality within this nation.
Right.
So, so that's basically the point that I'm coming from.
Yeah, right. And it should be Black led. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Uh, so as far as what the Democratic Party has been doing in your state, I have an article here that I will be sharing my screen really quick. just to show what has been going on. And it shows that, the Democratic Party has really been subverting democracy in your state. The Democratic Party has no interest in really being democratic, as we can see. This is actually out of the Carolina Journal. And it talks about the Green Party says Democrats use tricks to block them from the ballot. So, can you just go into what is exactly going on within North Carolina and what the Democratic Party is doing to keep, candidates like yourself off the ballot?
Yeah, it's there's two sides to this. One is with the state board of elections, and one is with the Democratic Party itself. And there's a connection, of course. They've worked together. So I'll take it back and begin from several weeks ago. We had to get on the ballot as a party here, be recognized as a party by the state of North Carolina. We needed 13,865 verified signatures. We collected 22,500 signatures, and of those, 15,953 signatures were verified by the County Board of Elections. We met all the deadlines required. Our signatures, those nearly 16,000 signatures, about 2,100 signatures more than we needed that were verified. We turned those in on June 1st to the State Board of Elections. The State Board of Elections has taken the full 30 days allowed to them by state statute to review those signatures. As we have found out that in 2020, the State Board of Elections looked at no signatures. They took what the counties gave them and just certified it. But here in our case, they have chosen to do a full investigation. We cooperated fully with the investigation. We actually had a great relationship with the investigations team. And on Thursday, June 30th, the last possible day for the State Board of Elections to certify us, because there is a statutory July 1st deadline for certification, which is a whole other aspect of the tricks that were involved here. Even if they had certified us, we would have had less than 24 hours to do a number of other procedural things by that July 1st deadline. So they really did everything they could to make sure this wouldn't be possible for us. So we go into that certification meeting on Thursday morning. We have been told by the State Board of Elections investigation team that, yeah, there are about 200 signatures that we are concerned with, and we know exactly what that was. So just to explain, 95% of our signatures were gathered by people in our party, people who are a part of our campaign, people part of our movement, socialists, leftists, independents, folks who are out there getting signatures. And about 5% we got through a contracted firm. Some we said, hey, can you go out and get us signatures? And within that, we understand that two people submitted about 200 signatures that were fraudulent, that they made them up, basically just filled in the boxes on the petition sheet. And we were aware of that. We cooperated fully, again, with the State Board of Elections. We were told about 200. None of those signatures were ever counted as verified signatures. So they were never going towards the total we needed anyway to be certified by the State Board of Elections. We walked into that, well, it was virtual, so we didn't walk into it. But the meeting on Thursday morning with the State Board of Elections, brazenly partisan affair. State Board of Elections, their people, the director who was appointed by Democratic Governor Roy Cooper, and I'll just say the board of the State Board of Elections is composed of 5 people, 3 Democrats and 2 Republicans. And of course, they are chosen not because they love democracy and know a lot about elections, but because of their loyalty to the parties, right? And that in a situation like this, they can be dependent upon to do the right thing for the party. And they certainly did. So what they said, the director of the State Board of Elections, again, a Democrat appointed by Roy Cooper, was that because there was this fraud, as well as like a handful of other things that were brought up that, easily explainable. Some of it we had never heard before, but nothing that amounted to anything, and nothing that we were told and we know of to have ever counted towards our verified signature total. We're told because there was this fraud, we're concerned that there may be more. That, in her words, there's a cloud over all of this. And because of that cloud, we need more time to investigate. And then the chairman of the State Board of Elections then chimed in and basically said, well, we need more time to investigate, but there is no more time to investigate because tomorrow's the deadline. So
Mm-hmm.
because of this concern, this cloud that there could be more fraud, even though we've
Mm-hmm.
shown you no evidence of any, and it's all just supposition on our part, and certainly not showing you anything that would affect your verified signature count, we are going to vote not to certify you. And that's exactly what they did. They voted not to certify us based upon the speculation that there could be more fraud without showing us the evidence. So certainly, there was no due process there and everything else. At one point, our attorney, who was only allowed to speak for a few minutes, and he was allowed to speak, he was able to ask a question, and he said, do any of these count towards the verified signature tally? And the chairman of the State Board of Elections refused to answer. He falsely said that this is a criminal investigation, which it's not, but he said it anyway. He said it either to make us look bad or to also say that because of criminal investigation, we can't tell you anything. But again, it wasn't a criminal investigation. And then when our attorney tried to follow up, this chair of the State Board of Elections shouted him down and muted his microphone. And then they voted to decertify us.
In fact, I actually have that video to show so that people can see exactly what you're talking about. And I would like to show that really quick right now, just so that there's more context about what's going on. So I'm going to share my screen really quick, and we will take a look at this.
Mr. Tucker, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair votes no.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. I had it up and it left me. Hang on. My apologies.
Oh, no problem. And then there's the other side of it too, which you alluded about the tricks, which is that a couple of weeks ago, we were made aware that the State Board of Elections had turned our petition records over to the Elias Law Firm. And Elias Law Firm is Mark Elias's law firm. He is probably familiar to a lot of people. If he's not, just go and look up his Wikipedia page. This is the Democrats' top lawyer. This is the law firm for the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. They were down here, and what they were doing was trying to get people to remove themselves from our petitions. So they were calling people and texting them and saying, "Did you under the guise of checking the integrity of the petitions and saying, would you consider removing yourself from our petitions because abortion is hanging in the balance, and a vote for and this will help the Republicans over the Democrats, giving that their usual split the vote spoiler spiel." Now, what they were also doing was they were calling people and texting people and identifying themselves as with the Green Party. So they would call people and say, "We're with the Green Party. Would you like to take your name off our petition?" We have audio recordings of that. And then they were showing up at people's homes, including people who had responded to the text and phone calls saying, "I want to keep my name on the petition." They were still showing up at people's homes again. So there was a harassment because they were calling people 5-6 times a day for multiple days in a row. They were showing up at their homes. There was the bullying, the shaming, that type of thing. But then also too, there's the clear misrepresentation, the fraud of saying that they were with the Green Party when they were obviously not.
So I have the video ready, and I will also like to get into the tactics that they were using against petition signers as well right after this. But I want people to get this for context is exactly what's going on.
I would like to, and I'm hopeful that we can get to the bottom of this. And it would be my personal desire, to see this new party on the ballot. But given what's in front of us today, I can't in good conscience vote to certify today. So I would like to wait, give our staff enough time to go through this process. If there's a motion to vote on this today, I will be voting no.
Mr. Chairman, may I be recognized?
Yeah, Mr. Hall, let's make it brief though, please.
Well, thank you. Is there any question as to the validity of the 15,953 signatures that have been validated by state county boards of elections?
Mr. Hall, I don't want to get into the details of a criminal investigation, but I have questions sufficient in number to be not willing to vote for certification today.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I asked the question because the board is effectively presuming that there is some question as to the validity of those signatures by delaying the certification and possibly rejecting the certification of the Green Party petitions. And if there is some presumption here that is operative, the presumption ought to be that validated signatures are valid, unless there is some basis for considering them invalid or at least subject to further investigation. So again, the question is there any basis for considering or questioning the validity of any one of those 15,953 validated signatures?
And I will thank you for your comments to the board. I will stand by my earlier assertion, and I will ask any other board members if they have questions.
Mr. Chairman, you have not answered the question. You are now
Mr. Hall, you're out of order, sir. Go ahead and mute Mr. Hall, please. I'll ask the board members if they have any other questions for staff.
So at the end, that was the point where it devolved into just, okay, just shut him up. I don't want to hear what he has to say because, you know, the sun's in my eye and, you know, yeah. I don't want to know, you know, I don't, you know, because the thing is that you're basically saying, okay, there was some that, you know, didn't really have any validity. Okay. So by that small amount that didn't have any validity, we're going to take it and say all the rest of them do not have any validity at all either. So then, sorry, you know what? We can't put you on the ballot. So you're going to have to try again next time. See you next year.
Right. And that's right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And if you're there's more to that clip and some other things, but the smugness and the attitude of what are you going to do about it? But your point, James, is exactly that, because we can say this gives us cover to do whatever we want.
Yeah.
And the danger here is just not in North Carolina. This sets a precedent, you know, and this shows that they're able to go. And it's amazing because I've had many people say to me who've been doing this a lot longer than I have, political journalists and folks in the Green Party and third party independent type folks who they've never seen anything like it. The brazenness of it. The lack of any type of accountability, lack of any kind of evidence, the lack of due process, all those kinds of things. It wasn't even carefully constructed to give them the cover of, look, hey, these guys did something wrong. Basically, they're saying, look, we can see this, so we're going to assume all that, and then we're going to deny you.
Yeah. I missed this question from Colin earlier. If we can just go back and answer this question really quick. This is a super chat by Colin. My apologies, Colin. But he asked, in your opinion, what role should education serve in the country? If you can answer that really quickly.
Oh yeah, I mean, gosh, it's just a foundation for people. Again, getting past the whole capitalist idea of education is necessary because it's going to help you get a good paying job. And no, education helps people live their lives. And whatever form of education people need, whatever form of education they want, should be made available to them. So if your thing is, you want to learn how to fix cars, if you want to, whatever it is, because there's so much out there, but that's the whole purpose of it. And if you have that type of educational system, I think you have the ability for the economy as a whole and society as a whole to really advance. But no, people should be allowed to study and do and become what they know themselves to be.
There was actually a really also interesting question that I saw that I would like to also address. From Colin says, what will he give to the people if he loses, so that there's something that the working class can continue to build upon? So it like, what contingency basically is in place just in case, the Senate seat doesn't happen?
Yeah, no, it's continued to, particularly what I'm interested in doing right now afterwards is helping build the mechanical or technical aspects of campaigns
Mm-hmm.
that I'm learning now. So again, this idea of not just finding people to run, but finding people who can become treasurers, who can become campaign managers, who can become, all the different aspects of a campaign that you need to operate fully and robustly. I know a lot of people, I've come in touch with a lot of people whose campaigns, and of course we want to get money out of politics. I want to get all money out of politics, but in the reality, if we are serious about pursuing electoralism as one part of a larger strategy here, we have to have the people who can do that. And when you have campaigns that, because they're not familiar with the requirements of the FEC or with the state electoral committees, and then you see things like what just happened, that certainly scares people, but, so I've run into a lot of people who've run campaigns who made sure they didn't raise more than $5,000 so that they wouldn't have to do the reporting to the FEC and the IRS. And that's a big stick. That's a big stick. We're seeing what's happening with Jill Stein right now, where they're going after her and she's personally on the hook for a couple $100,000 because the FEC is claiming that they did something wrong with their presidential matching funds. I can't even begin to explain what they're claiming because it's so obtuse, so vague, and so convoluted. And that's the way, I tell you what, you read, you get into this. I'm a first-time candidate, but you get into this and you read the Congressional Campaign, Congressional Candidates and Committees Guidebook. And this thing is brilliantly written. To be as vague as it is masterful. And this keeps people out. Because how do you do this now? And you look what happened with Jill. You look what happens with other people when they raise money and then they get in trouble for raising money. Well, that's the stick that they come after you with. So, how do I help people get the resources that they need to continue to do this? And then, of course, continue to work with, on the activism side with the groups I have been working with for, 12 years or so now, Veterans for Peace, Code Pink, other groups like that.
Yeah. So I do want to go to the tactics that they were using. This is, pardon my French, but this is some shady shit. That I saw that honestly needs to be brought to light. And thankfully, you were on Jimmy Dore a couple days ago, so you got a lot of coverage for that. But I'm when I first saw this, I was literally like, "What? Are you kidding me right now?" So this is actually from a caller from the from one of the members of the Democratic Party that were trying to get people to get their name off of the ballot. So take a listen to this, folks.
You're calling to confirm whether or not I signed a petition. Mass, who are you calling with? What organization? Oh, is this the Green Party?
Yes.
You're with the Green Party?
Yes, and we have you listed as wanting to get the candidates on the North Carolina ballot. Did you sign that?
So you were calling as a representative of the Green Party?
This guy can't believe it.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I did sign it.
Okay, and would you say you strongly support it or just somewhat support it?
I don't think I'd sign something unless I strongly support it.
The hell?
Okay. Well, thank you for confirming. Animal participation in elections is important. If the Green Party is on the ballot, it will take votes away from Democrats, giving Republicans a huge advantage.
Whoa! Whoa! Hang on. Let's go back on that one for a second. Let's just hang on. Now the real JB is starting to come out. I was trying to be professional JB, but JB is going to come out right now. So hang on. Let's go back for that for a second. Let's go. Let's go.
Okay. Well, thank you for confirming. Animal participation in elections.
Here's the point.
If the Green Party is on the ballot, it will take votes away from Democrats, giving Republicans a huge advantage.
It'll take votes away from Democrats. Voting green means you're voting green. It's not taking away from Democrats. You're not dropping. How in the world do you take a cup of water and pour it into a green bucket and it transmutates into the red bucket? That doesn't happen. It is wild to think that. And yet, this is what this guy is basically saying.
Yep.
Let's finish.
North Carolina in 2022 and 2024. There's far too much at stake to let this happen. Are you interested in asking to have your name removed from this petition or leave it as is?
I'm confused. So if you're with the Green Party, why are you asking to remove? Are you? I'm sorry.
Yes, I totally.
Yeah, and that's what would happen.
Crazy,
We a number of people told us when they asked that question, like, wait a minute here. You're at the Green Party and you're telling me to take. They either two things would happen. One, the call would end, like a manager would close it out or whatever, or they would say, we've had reports that they say it's okay because we're already on the ballot. That you're taking your name off the petition will not affect our ballot line because we're already on it. So again, a further lie. And we've gotten communication. We had just the other day, got an email from a couple who had signed our petition, and they said they got this call and they are very concerned. So they, and they are so concerned about what's happening with guns and abortion. And those are the talking points they're using, the Democratic Party, and that they really don't want to do anything to hurt that. So can we please take our names off of this since you called us and asked us to do it, basically, so it's effective. And the guy who's doing this, Mark Elias, Elias Law Firm, he perfected this in 2004 when he was John Kerry's general counsel. And if you talk to folks who've been part of the Green Party for a long time, they will tell you about that campaign that Elias and others waged against the Green Party in 2004, particularly against Ralph Nader. And so what they're doing is, I'm sure they've got, just like I've got my book here, I'm sure they got the same type of, okay, let's open it up, the chapter on how do we crush a third party and independent. First thing we do, get the petition records. Let's, and there's multiple levels on this, James, of just how they're getting away with something that no one else could get away with. Like when we collect all those signatures, collected 22, and I'll say this too, we collected 22,500 signatures. We talked to tens of thousands of more people. The State Board of Elections received no complaints about us until the Elias Law Firm shows up. Right. So they're able to structure everything and to work kind of hand in glove with the government institutions. Because I'll tell you this, if you're a lawyer, if you're the general counsel or you're that chairman of the State Board of Elections and you do good this way, look, you just please the Democratic Party big time. Well, when the Democrats lose power in 2 years here in North Carolina, which they probably will, you might have a job with Elias Law Firm. You know what I mean? So there's all kinds of levels of this, right? What we're seeing put right out to us. But like I've been saying to my folks, like, look, this is the reason we're doing, this is what the beast looks like, and if you're not excited by this, to have this opportunity to fight, of course, be pissed off. But if you're not excited by this, maybe you want to be doing something different because this is what it means to take these people on. And, we're not going to lie down. We're going to fight this, legally and through other ways as well.
Of course. But, I'm just at a point right now where, like, for instance, if they say, they're still going to be on the ballot. We're just concerned about the names on the list. And if you want to take your name off the list, well, if they're already on the ballot, then the damage is already done. So why are you calling to take the name off the list if that's already done? It doesn't make sense.
No.
And so the thing is that people think that it's some official calling. So then they go, well, I guess.
Right.
And they don't know, why this is going on. And so they'll think that this may be, and a lot of times people, let me square with the audience who's watching. If a person says they're from the Democratic Party, right, that doesn't mean they're from the government. The Democratic Party is a private organization, not a bureaucratic institution. I will repeat. The Democratic Party is a private organization, not a bureaucratic institution, meaning you can tell them to F off and hang up and they can't do a thing against you.
Right.
So that being said, then people automatically think the Democratic Republican Party equals government, and then they'll think, oh, well, okay, this person is part of the government, and so this person means my well-being. No, they don't.
And
No, they don't.
we actually have reports from people of them calling and showing up at homes and saying they're with the state board of elections. And
Yeah.
this was a point that was brought up by one of the board members of the state board of elections, a Republican member, that when you start doing this, exactly in his experience, it's the guy who's seen it. And I have no doubt that if we were conservative, if we were a libertarian or a Constitution Party or something else, those guys would have said the exact same thing the Democrats did, and the Democrats would have said what the Republicans said at this hearing. I mean, so completely and disgustingly partisan in all ways. But like, yeah, this idea that you're going to scare people, and that's going to cause people to take their names off, the petition. And the other aspect too, I want to make sure people understand how effective this is. This has meant that one, trying to get on the ballot was a full-time effort for the campaign and the party. We could do really nothing else. All the money we raised had to go to that. All our time, all the attention, everything we did went towards getting on the ballot, doing that petition gathering effort. And in the last 6 weeks has been nothing but dealing with the state board of elections. Like, my campaign manager spends all day long dealing with these issues, talking to the investigators, and it is designed that way. So on the front end, you have this onerous and difficult process to secure the signatures to get enough to get on the ballot, which is too exhaustive for most independents and most third parties. And then on the back end, when you turn those signatures in, you then face this bureaucratic procedural process that in itself is exhausting as well. So it dictates the entire campaign for months and doesn't allow you to do anything other than try and get on the ballot. And then even now, where we should have been certified, we should have been on the ballot, here I am, and I really appreciate you giving me an opportunity to talk about all the policy stuff, right? And all the issue stuff and who we are, because I've spent the last several days only talking about this. And going forward, I can't imagine many interviews or many opportunities to speak about issues, because we're going to have to talk all the time, and in less friendly media, defend ourselves as not being fraudsters, right? Yeah. So even, it's breathtaking how effective this is, and they've honed it over time. But again, this proves our point that the two-party system is corrupt, it's undemocratic, and it's harmful.
Yeah, and just there's a super chat that was given by Andrew. You said, I've seen Bart Simpson do a better prank call than the Democrats, which is true. I mean, Amanda hug and kiss, that was pure perfection. Chef's kiss. It was wonderful. What the Democrats did, y'all are horrible. But there's to add a little bit of lightheartedness to it. But this actually shows what they're doing on the ground at people's houses in North Carolina. And I just want to get into this. This is basically alluding to what you were just saying earlier. So let me play this, and I will enlarge it as well.
Be a huge disadvantage to Democrats and would be an advantage to Republicans. So we're asking people if they're interested in removing their name from the petition.
Okay, so you're from
North Carolina Democrats.
You're from North Carolina Democrats, correct? Yeah. And you used the public information based on the petition that I signed, correct? For getting the Green Party candidate onto the ballot, correct?
Well, that's the petition that you signed.
Correct. Yeah. I'm fully aware of that.
Yeah, so we're just asking people if they were interested in removing their name from the petition. Like, some people signed it and didn't know they were being misled. Some people didn't even sign it, but their signature was on there. So that they're investigating that too.
Yeah, I get it. You have to audit the petition, correct? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure how that works. Like, they just contracted me to go around and ask people.
Okay. About if I wanted to take my name off of the list.
Correct.
And that's because, like, I'm not following. I mean, I signed it because I wanted the Green Party to be on the ballot.
Right. So we're letting people know that it would be a disadvantage for Democrats. And
Boom!
Right. You guys should move further left, and then that would.
Hang on. What did she say? Remember the phone call earlier? Hang on. Let's play that again.
Right. So we're letting people know that it would be a disadvantage for Democrats and an advantage for Republicans.
It will be a disadvantage for Democrats. Boo freaking who? Right? Gosh, these people.
Right. You guys should move further left, and then that wouldn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's like I want a third party on the ballot. I want ranked choice voting so we have a viable third party candidate. And if the Democrats are concerned about that, then they should probably change their politics a bit, as opposed to coming to my house and trying to get me to get my name off a petition.
Right.
So, I mean, this is a lot. I mean, I knew you guys were coming because other people that I know have signed that petition have said they're coming for you. So this tactic, I don't agree with it. I understand why you're doing it. Politically, I understand why you're doing it. It's dirty pool. I don't like it. But honestly, it's and I understand legally you can do this. But from a political standpoint, I don't agree with it.
Okay.
And I understand I can remove my name from that list, but I don't choose to.
Okay, and that's completely fine.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's completely fine.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm sorry about it.
You're very welcome. Have a great day.
Yeah, I don't know if you have the tweets, the text that they sent out, but I can read you what they sent to me briefly, just to give you an idea of what they said in the text. So, in the text, they would say, hi Matthew, my name's Drew. We're texting you because your name was listed on a petition submitted to help place the Green Party and its candidates on the North Carolina ballot in 2022 and 2024. Mm-hmm. We just wanted to confirm whether you signed this petition, and then yes, I did sign. No, I did not sure. Wrong number. And then when I said yes, I hit 1 for I confirmed it. It says, thank you for confirming. If the Green Party is on the ballot, it will give Republicans a huge advantage that will help them win in North Carolina in 2022 and 2024. In past elections, we've seen that the Green Party takes votes away from Democrats, which helps Republicans win. With abortion rights in the balance, we can't afford to give Republicans more of an advantage. Are you interested in asking the Elections Board to have your name removed from this petition? 1 for yes, 2 for no. And that's so I hit no. And then it says, I understand this seems like a lot of effort, but we want to make sure the Democratic candidates have the best chance to win this November. And this could make a big difference. Would you be willing to have your name removed? And I said no again. And then they stopped.
Wow.
But, yeah, but that's the type of, and so there's a whole issue here as well. I mean, again, James, so many levels, right? These public records. If they had gotten the public records to check the integrity of the petitions, which is I'm sure what they claimed, but then they took these records and used them for their own political purposes, right? They're out there basically campaigning and saying that, you can't vote for these guys. You can't help these guys get in the ballot because it's going to hurt abortion. It's going to hurt. I mean, so there's all kinds of levels and we're going to do what we can, of course, to go after them on that. I don't want to get into specifics. At this point, what our legal strategy is going to be. But certainly we do have, and people who signed have, I think a very valid complaint here that, their personal information was violated. They signed this for one purpose. And it's being used by the Democratic Party for another purpose. Oh yeah, there's the text messages. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is deeply anti-democratic, and that's why I said it was subversion of democracy, because they're basically lying to people in order to keep their power. And instead of actually letting the democratic process play out, it shows really how anti-democratic, the Democratic Party is. And the Democratic Party, having the word Democrat in their name does not mean they are any more democratic as the Federal Express is part of the federal government. And people need to learn to understand how anti-democratic they really are. And this is why I say they are in league with the Republicans, because the Republicans also have their own tactics that they use in order to subvert democracy as well. So they both subvert democracy on different fronts, but they know nonetheless subvert democracy in their own way. And so they do this to try to keep people off of the ballots. Like, for instance, yourself, because you pose a threat to their boss's power, which
Right.
is the oligarchs of the United States.
Right. Right. And that's the whole thing, James. This is not about keeping me off the ballot. It's not about keeping the Green Party off the ballot. It's about keeping these issues that are important to,
Mhm.
tens of millions of people off the ballot that otherwise aren't going to be addressed. If we're not on the ballot, healthcare, education, housing, jobs, all these things we've been talking about are not going to be addressed in this campaign.
Mhm.
So it's not about keeping me or the party off the ballot, but it's keeping off those things and what those things represent in terms of who they represent, those people off the ballot, out of the conversation, because that's what threatens the big money donors, the Democrats and Republicans. Look, I mean, watching the January 6th hearings, right? Those hearings don't affect Monsanto. They don't affect Raytheon. They don't affect, any of, right? I mean, Goldman Sachs. So, those hearings are allowed to proceed. We'll never see hearings on the wars. We'll never see hearings on the catastrophic, and murderous COVID response, right? I mean, like all those we'll never, because those are a danger to the donor base of both the Democrats and Republicans. And I think getting back to what you said about how there's no difference between them, or there's a slight difference along social issues, but the real important things are who funds these people, and that's where you see the overlap. And that's why they're threatened by us. That's why they're threatened by these movements. That's why, because we represent, and I mean the collective we, everyone here, people watching, everything else, we represent people who otherwise are not going to be represented come November.
Yeah, definitely. And so I just put it in the chat. Your website, and I go, whenever I go to a website, I go straight to the issues. And so you talk about many different issues, and this was interesting because you actually went over this with Sabby Sabs on her channel, going down the list of various different issues. And one of the things that I was looking at was economic democracy and ownership. That being said, I am a socialist. And so, with that being said, I do believe that workers should own the means of production and distribution. So, you talk about public banking. Shout out to somebody who's always on my channel and Savvy's channel, watches on Rockford and Roger Meadows. He's been talking about debt. Besides ballot initiatives, he talks a lot about public banking these days now. And so you're talking about debt forgiveness, both medical and education in particular. A lot of people are talking about education, with student loan debt, but we don't have as many people talking about forgiving medical debt.
Right.
And so I'm glad that you put that also in there as well, in, the part about public banking. And, it's will be a massive investment and spark for our economy and nation. So I'm glad that you put that in there, because public banking is something I think that is sorely needed in this country as well.
Yeah, no, this idea of medical debt. I mean, it's not in terms of volume as large as the 1.7 or 1.8 trillion in student debt, but it's ruining families, millions of families. Like we spoke before, you indicated you've got some, James, right, of this, and then, like I said, 1 in 4 North Carolina adults are in collections for medical debt. Like, just aside from the moral and just aspects of that, if you pure economics, like that's not sustainable. That's not sustainable. So, we know that if you survive cancer, you've got your odds are 1 in 2 that you're going to go bankrupt. You beat cancer, and then half those folks who beat cancer end up bankrupt. I mean, just the cruelness of it, the barbarism that is behind all this. Yeah, and we certainly see other nations do this, and there's absolutely no reason why we cannot, other than that it would take away from the profits of Cigna and United Healthcare and, all the other, health insurance companies.
Yes. One of the things that you also put in here and that really caught my eye, you said, and enshrine a renter's bill of rights. Now, as you may know, on my channel recently, I had on Shama Sawan, who is a big proponent of a rent control within her city of Seattle. Councilwoman Sawan also, wanted to implement some different policies that I think is really good to try to push for if you are running for office, and adopt these as part of your policy platform, because I think it's actually really good. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Shama Sawan, but
Oh yeah, yeah, of course,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Oh, okay.
yeah,
So everybody on the left knows who she is. Good.
yeah.
Uh, but this is one of the things that she had in renters' rights demands from our movement. This is from Socialist Alternative, and I'm hoping that the Green Party be able to implement something like this. And one of the things that I actually think that was a brilliant idea is a 6-month, 180 days notice for rent increases, things like that. Ban evictions of school children and educators during the school year.
Right.
Banning the use of credit checks. I actually was denied an apartment because of, if you are doing a credit check and, say you're, renting with another person, uh, if you are cleared for that credit check, but the person you're trying to rent with isn't cleared for that credit check, let's say it's your spouse or something like that, well, then you don't get the apartment at all. And so this would actually get rid of that disparity. And then is closing the loopholes, and standard lease terms, things like that. So it's really more of a standardized throughout the entire nation.
Right.
But sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, please continue.
Yeah, so I think that, some of these policies are really good to try to implement, especially on a national level. Seeing as how you have so many of us that, like, literally my rent just went up a huge amount. And I cannot sustain this being somebody that's on a fixed income.
Right.
And so, as someone who's literally going through this right now, I think it is deeply imperative that we try to do this because, and you say you're a proponent of housing as a human right. Um, you know, One thing I do have a fear of, and I can't let you go without pointing this out. And I just, and I know you take this to heart, but I just want to make sure that it's said out loud. Is that when people typically go into government, especially within the federal government, there's a drifting that takes place. And this drifting means that once you start to rub shoulders with the people who are in government, and a lot of times, because I've heard a lot of people say that they don't go there to make friends, and then they still drift,
Right.
unfortunately, and that's what happens. And then also there's a loss of touch with people who got them there. Like, for instance, how often do you see people like AOC going on Jimmy Dore anymore, even though
Right.
he was one of, he was literally one of the first people who brought her on. And so, you know that's just the fear that I have of a drifting that takes place with people who just so happen to get into government because of are now in a higher tax bracket, and so they start to rub shoulders with people who are in that higher tax bracket, and
Sure.
so then the what's the word I want to use, the sense of urgency somehow leaves them. See what I mean?
Yeah. No, I totally understand. If I wanted to do that, I would run as a Democrat.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, like, it's one of the reasons why I'm not in that party. I've never been a part of that party. I have no interest in it. And to reform, change. I don't talk about things, and I because I know there's a lot of reform versus burn it down kind of thing, and I lean more towards the latter there. Although I have seen what occurs when you violently try to change something, both in Iraq and Afghanistan. I carry that guilt with me the rest of my life, and I understand how innocent people are ruined and how might makes right in those circumstances. And but you know, the idea of exactly what I know what you're saying, and I don't know how to assure people otherwise than to look at what I've done, to look at what I've walked away from, to look at how I've lived my life. You know, I'm a war tax resister. I haven't paid taxes to the federal government in 5 years now, you know, because I won't pay for war, you know, and every year I would send a letter to every year I've been sending a letter to the IRS. I'm not paying you, you know, I mean, so I'm not sure how to prove to people that I'm not going to get there and then start, eating at steakhouses and like enjoying my, you know, black SUV limousine rides and everything else and have it go to my head. Other than I've already been up there. I've spent gosh, man, I went to the Pentagon as a White House liaison officer in 2002. I've been around this. I've seen it. If I wanted this, I would have done it already. Yeah, you know, I'm 49 years old. I live off my veterans disability. I've got a small house. I live a life that is unlike any of my peers that I have left behind. And things I have chosen to do in terms of who I affiliate with and who I belong to, and choosing not to continue with the paths I had, whether it be through the Marine Corps, the State Department, think tank world, my friendships with members of Congress as I worked on anti-war stuff, choosing to do it this way. And I've pissed off a lot of people. The day after I announced, I got a lot of angry messages from people in DC who are with the Democratic Party because I've worked with them, and you know, threatening, bullying, you know, that kind of stuff. And and I know what I'm up against. I know I'll be a target, and that's fine. Look, what motivates me? You asked me about this, and I didn't really get into it too much because I tend to get upset and emotional. I'm trying to be a politician, right? So, but the reality is that anger is what motivates me. Why I'm doing this because I do want to burn the fucking thing down, man. They killed my friends. They killed a lot of people who I loved, and they killed a lot of people who did nothing other than exist. What we did in Iraq and Afghanistan, the fact there's been no accountability for that. That's why I'm doing it. Yeah, you know, the aspect of accountability here. So when I say I go up there not to make friends, when I say I go up there with the idea of welcoming them in their hatred, I can tell you that that's very sincere. Yeah. And it'd be stupid of me to speak like this because it's not going to do me any favors other than the fact that this is the truth. So, you know, in a sense of like, how do I prove I'm not going to sell out? I can't prove that, but go and look at what I've done and listen to my words and understand that the anger that motivates me, the very sincere and real anger. I mean, it's coupled with the guilt I have for taking part in those wars. Yeah. You know, it drove me to suicidality and everything else. So, you know, and what I've seen happen to people and see happen to people I love, you know, and people in my life because we've chosen these paths. You know, I mean, how many more funerals do I have to go from guys who are putting guns in their mouths after coming home from Iraq and Afghanistan, even these years later? And there's no accountability for it. There's no accountability. People who waged those wars, who lied about them, where's the accountability for them? So that's a lot of it is to go there with that attitude of getting some form of justice for people. And that's what motivates me. Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is that just one thing, this is more of a comment than anything else, is that the norm within these political circles is to always be calm. I think, honestly, we like seeing people who are pissed off. Yeah. We like seeing people who actually go after them because we're sick and tired of people doing the civility politics type of deal because they've been using that as a shield instead of actually going after the people and holding them accountable. So if you put down a couple of expletives and you show how angry you really are, and also on top of that, you know, you really hold them to the fire, and not by holding them to the fire, I mean strongly worded letters and things like that. No, you say that they are the enemy of the American people. And yeah, we're going to take down the corporation. I know that, a lot of times people are going to be like, that's counterintuitive, but I feel like there's no recourse really for anything else besides that. And really, this is this is really like what you're doing. Really is the last ditch effort before revolution. It really is
I
because
understand. Yeah, I do, and I
yeah,
agree. And I'm haunted by what I saw in Iraq and Afghanistan. I'm haunted by
mhm,
it
yeah,
because might makes right in those situations, and
yeah,
and what comes from situations like that is
hmm
uncontrollable and unknowable, and it is
yeah,
a last ditch effort. And if the Democratic Party continues to want to say that they support people and they choose not to, this is the
hmm
consequences for it,
hmm
and maybe that's the effort that gets, I mean, and again, like I said earlier, there's three prongs, right? We grow the movement, everything else. But
hmm
the idea that we're doing this to hurt the system, to
hmm
disrupt the system. People say you're a spoiler. I say, no, no, I'm a disruptor. And that's what I want to be. Disrupt the system, cause so much pain, so much aggravation, so much
hmm
dismay that the
hmm
system has to change. At the
yeah,
same time, we're building, we're building, we're building. But I agree with you, James,
hmm
absolutely,
yeah,
that we're getting to a point where it's becoming untenable.
hmm
It is. It's going to become very dangerous. And as
hmm
the climate crisis, the climate collapse worsens, that will add to it. And
hmm
yes, I mean the idea that somehow that this is just something we're going to do just to roll merrily along and improve our politics and everything else. And it's a nice, I took advanced placement American government when I was a junior in high school, and now I'm really living it out. No, that's all bullshit. I mean, no,
yeah,
this comes from anger and a fear
yeah,
of what I know is coming if we don't do something. And I don't
mhm,
know, will this look? I mean, I'll be realistic about what we're up against. We know how things work in our society. We know that in 2020, the Democrats and Republicans spent $300 million on the U.S. Senate race in North Carolina. $300 million. So we're here raising, the best we've done so far is $20,000 a month. And we're up
yeah,
against something that's going to be 300 million, was 300 million. This year it'll be 325, 350, whatever. Yeah, I know what we're up against here, but there also is ways that we can do this asymmetrically and fight them in a way that hurts them and
hmm
build what we're trying to build. And that's what we're trying to accomplish.
yeah. So my faith in this system is basically gone. So, if you were able to get in, then I'd be pleasantly surprised. But until then, I might be looking to you to give me some firearms training for the near future. But I want to thank you for, being on. Just to let you guys know, his website is also in the description below. And if there's any way that they can assist you, especially with uncovering what the Democratic Party is doing, how can they help you out with that so that you can get on the ballot?
Right. Please. Website is MatthewHoferSenate.org. If you agree with what I'm saying, if you're angry about this, we've got to fight, and we've got a real fight here, and we've got a fight that can be of national prominence and of
Yeah.
importance. Help people understand how corrupt and how harmful the two-party system is. So please, if you can, please help us out. We need to hire lawyers, do all that kind of stuff to fight these people. So
hmm
MatthewHoferSenate.org. If you're able to donate, and if you're able to get other people to donate. And yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Twitter at Matthew P. Ho. Feel free to DM me there. We're on Facebook at Matt for Senate or something like that. I don't know that stuff that well, but like, that's one of the things. We need people to help us as well. And we need this kind of grassroots effort, right? As well as I'm going to say, folks like James, man, please continue to support them. I know I'm preaching in the choir to you all because you do. But where else, are you going to get this type of information if you're not going to outlets like Revolutionary Blackout Network and everything, right? I mean, like, where else are you going to get this information if you're not hearing it from James? I mean, it's limited. And as James said earlier, there are a lot of folks out there who claim to be independent and alternative, but who are not, who, when push comes to shove, if they have the opportunity to have a big Democratic Party person on or some person from the Green Party, they're going to shut the Green Party down. So.
Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us. Matthew Ho, everybody. And thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. Take
Yeah,
care.
you bet, man. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. So that was a great interview to talk about really what is going on with the Democratic Party. Like I've said before, I honestly have the opinion that the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are two of this two sides of the same coin. And so, when you look at what they did to people like Matthew Ho, uh, it's really indicative of what's going on throughout the rest of the country. And with that being said, you are seeing really in real time, like their hand with in the cookie jar, so to speak, and you're literally seeing that happen. And you're saying, "We see you," and they're like, "You don't see anything. Uh, look, it's just a figment of your imagination." What? Like, are you kidding me right now? And so, I wanted to have Matthew on to be able to talk about this, because those of us who are, more favorable to a third party or independence, this is the uphill battle that they have to fight against. And those of you who were, game for the Democratic Party, you're now seeing how vile and despicable they really can be. And so I'm going to take this moment, gotta get myself ready, ah, to say this. No matter what anybody else at independent media says, they can say whatever they want, and they can disagree with me, but I'm taking the stand. Leave the Democratic Party. Leave them. Dim exit. Get out. Because the thing is, they do not believe in democracy. They do not believe in actually fighting for you. If you have a uterus, they will fail you. If you are abundant in melanin, they will fail you. If you love somebody of the same gender or have a different gender affiliation, they will fail you. If your income is to the point where you are struggling to survive, they will fail you. If you have family or loved ones or just hate seeing people suffer in other nations, they will fail you. If you have student loan debt or medical debt, they will fail you. If you're encountering the police, they will fail you. They fail you every single time. Why? Because they are in league with the Republicans. That's what they are. A vote for a Democrat is a vote for a Republican. I am saying that right here, and I'm putting that line in the sand. Because I don't care. Because every single time for the last 40 years, every single time people have put a Democrat in office, then guess what? The country moves further and further to the right, which leads me to believe one conclusion. The Democrats are the employees of the Republicans, and the Republicans are the employees of the oligarchs. That's what it is. We've been seeing it time and time again. So, like I said, this is in steps, in a 10-step program. What Matthew Ho is doing and what a lot of people are calling for things like general strike, this is the 9th or 10th step. After that, revolution. We're at the end, folks. And we're not, no, we're done. We are done. It is time to end it all and start it anew. Because we're just, like, look, we're tired. So, yeah, leave the Democratic Party. I'm saying it. And people can come in and be like, "Oh, well, JB, other podcasters and people in independent media could say, "Oh, JB, that's irresponsible. We should be going for whatever works." It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Tell me in 40 years when it actually worked. Show me in 40 years where it actually worked. And do not point towards social issues, because that's easy. Anybody can say that. Anybody can paint themselves in rainbow colors or kneel in kente cloth. No, 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 no. Point to me concrete economic issues as to why they still work. I will wait. Do, 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 do. Really? So that's the thing. And this is why, I know a lot of people are who are running in the Democratic Party that really like me, that would be like JB, but I want to, I'm running as a Democrat and I want to, change things in the Democratic Party. You're going to fail. I said it. You're going to fail. You are going to fail. Leave the Democratic Party, run as an indie, run as third party, or just do direct action on the ground. You can probably do more good there. Just do it that way. Don't even bother. Either that or wait for us to have a revolution and then you can try to get into the levers of government that way. No. No. It's not going to happen. I'm already convinced of that. It's not going to happen. And the thing is that people are sitting here trying to hand wring about, like, how did this happen with Roe v. Wade? How did it happen? Look at him. Look at him. Let me show you something. Because everybody's like, not everybody, not y'all, because y'all are based as, y'all know what's up. But I'm gonna show you something. Thanks to Matthew Ho for this. This was by the Wall Street Journal. This is an opinion. It says why Democrats are funding the GOP fringe. You think that they learned their lesson. You would think they learned their lesson from Hillary Clinton and the Pied Piper strategy. You would think they would learn that, because this is exactly what the Pied Piper strategy was. It was to uplift the farthest right fringes of the GOP to make them seem like they're crazy or unreasonable so we can beat them, and make it an easy contest. Right? That was allegedly the strategy to make it that way. I think, honestly, now that I'm looking at it deeper, and maybe you want to call me a conspiracy theorist, but they did this on purpose so the Republicans would win. Hillary Clinton is not running she's not floating around her name to possibly run again because she thinks she would win. She's running again because she wants to lose. That's her job, to lose to the GOP so that they can get in power. Because look at what Joe Biden has done policy-wise. He has been doing GOP policies this entire time while you guys were asleep. And then it locks it in when a GOP comes in, because now they also need to do more tax breaks for the rich. See, they can't necessarily do the tax breaks for the rich when they're Democrats, because then it kind of blows their cover. But then once the GOP gets into power, you expect them to do tax breaks for the rich. So guess what? That's what they're going to do, and it's going to lock it in. Then another Democrat's going to come in and then move in more GOP policies under the radar, and then what you do, you lock in once the GOP gets back into power. Look at what happened with George W. Bush. He put in the Bush tax cuts. Who locked in and made the Bush tax cuts permanent? It was Barack Obama. And then guess what? Donald Trump, another Trump tax cuts. Who locked those in and are making them permanent? Joe Biden. Guess what? They work with each other. It's all one party. Get out of that single party. Leave it. Leave it. Because they detest you if you're working class. They hate your guts. And they are working for the people who want everything. They want all the resources. They want all the homes. They want all the health care. They even want to own you. That's what it is. And in fact, they essentially already do. So what are you going to do about it? Because I'm tired, man. I'm tired. So yeah, leave the Democratic Party. People can come after me on Twitter. I don't care. I don't much read that shit that much anymore anyway. Because the thing is that people have been trying to reform the same party over and over. You can't reform shit because it's still shit. Just bury it in the ground and leave it. You can't. And maybe it'll fertilize something for the future. Maybe. Money Bear says we need to be educating the public and organizing the revolution now. You guys can use RBN to start. Thank you so much. There was another one that I thought I could have swore that I start that one. JB, get it together, man. Justin, thank you very much for the super chat. Says this is exactly why we should try the Green Party independent strategy. Dem strategy hasn't worked in 40 years. If it hasn't worked in 40 years, then why are we continuing this song and dance? Why? Why? Anywho, so I am past my time. It is time for me to go and make some dinner. A brother is hungry, y'all. But just let you guys know, if you guys are watching my channel on the JAB channel, I already posted my new reading of Dirty Truths by Michael Parenti on YouTube, and I am reading Blood in My Eye by George Jackson exclusively on Rockfin on my channel. So if you guys want to get into those as far as reading theory is concerned, I'm also doing that on my channel as well. And I just interviewed independent for state Senate Terrence Cutley, who is running for Massachusetts State Senate on my channel on YouTube on my channel. So if you guys would like to take a look at him, he's an independent candidate that is anti-capitalist and anti-imperialist. He is running for state Senate. And so I'm happy to have him on my channel as well. So I just want to thank every single person for being on in the chat and responding. Yeah. And Gene, thank you so much. Gene just said, thank you, JB, for all the chatters, even the ones who think a woman's not having the right to her own body is no big deal. Thing is that even people who think that they are conservative, you guys are just pawns in the game too. You guys are pawns. And they're using you, they're counting on you to hate other people who have different identities just so that they can actually steal from you too and then run out the back door. These are working class issues. Healthcare for everyone is a working class issue. Housing for all is a working class issue. Education for all is a working class issue. Having your student loan debt cancel is a working class issue. It is a class issue. Making sure that people are no longer homeless is a class issue. Making sure that everybody's kid has the same level of education, a high level of education in this country, is a class issue. Making sure that everybody has a living wage is a class issue. So this division that they're causing, this division that they're drumming up, yeah, no. They're just, you're being bamboozled. I got a super sticker. Thank you, Julie, for the super sticker. Thank you so much. Appreciate it so much. And yes, Blood in My Eye is a must read. Oh my god. Actually, you know what? Let me grab it really quick. Before I go. Sorry. Make sure. So this is the book that I'm reading exclusively on Rock. Let me take this down really quick. Love you, she's black. I gotta take it down just for a second. This is Blood in My Eye by George Jackson. Okay. Very revolutionary. Very, very. In fact, so much so that it's too spicy for YouTube. That's why I have to do it exclusively on Rockfin on my channel. But you guys can go, just look up JB Font on Rockfin and you'll find me. Go ahead, do it that way. And then on my channel, I'm also going to continue Dirty Truths by Michael Parenti, and that's on YouTube. I can read that on YouTube. Though, you know, YouTube, I don't know if they're going to catch on, but it's whatever. But yeah, so anywho, I just want to thank all of y'all for coming in. Make sure to water your plants, water yourself, leave the world better than you found it. Like I always say, thank you so much. Also, by the way, have y'all liked this stream? Hang on, let me do a like check, just like with CJ. Oh, and also, mind you, to all of you who are still watching, make sure that you're still subscribed because YouTube is literally removing subscribers. Make sure you're subscribed, okay? Please, because they are literally removing subscribers right now. And they're also removing likes too. So if you guys can do that, make sure to do that, please, as well. And hang on, let me see. Like check 1 2 1 2. We're at 266 likes. If we can get another, I don't know, 10 or so, then that'd be great. But anyways, also make sure to subscribe to Revolutionary Blackout Patreon. And thank you very much for everyone coming. So smoke them if you got them, drink them if you got them, hell, read them if you got them. You know what I'm saying? That's how we do. We like to do it up in here. Butterfly in the sky. Forehead kisses. I can go twice as high. Just take a look. It's in a book called Reading Rainbow. I can be any place. JB, shut up. Shut up, JB.